Shalom, and welcome to People on the Path. My name is Adam Lowy, and I am the lifelong learning Moreh Derech at Congregation Beth Shalom in San Francisco. Each month, I will welcome dynamic guests to discuss, learn, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choice impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What unsuspecting moments became the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for the conversation to be intimate, unscripted, and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. Let us please take a walk together on this month's People on the Path. Now, it has become tradition for me to check in with our senior rabbi, Rabbi Dan Ain, before I introduce our guests. So, Rabbi Ain, here we are again. We have moved into the month of June, and I applaud you once again for connecting me with today's guest, who is a friend of yours, a colleague of yours, and somebody that I had heard about many times from various people in the recent past. And so I was just blessed and excited that you knew our guest and could connect me with her. So before we bring her to the people on the
I
path,
know you like to introduce. I won't spoil that. Yeah.
I just want to check in. You know, life continues to move, and I know that you and I have talked about this a lot. Move from kind of the bondage of the last 15 months to a bit of freedom and a bit of let's say stretching ourselves in a good way. And so, how are you doing this time, based
You
on
know,
where we're at? And the fact that June 15th is almost coming, which is supposed to be a pretty monumental day in California, at least. So how
that's,
are you?
according to the governor, that's the reopening date. I mean, I definitely think we are moving. We're towards summer. The school year's almost over. For some kids, it's over. And I think maybe the weather will improve, although it's summer in San Francisco, of course. But I think we're excited. I think people really are looking forward to the summer. It's been a really long year. And I think one of the things I've been feeling this this week, along with the Torah portion. So when this is being recorded, it's Friday. The Torah portion is Shlach Lecha. And, they've been sort of in the wilderness for this little period of time, and they're about to enter into the promised land and but there's this anxiety and there's the lingering trauma. And so with the combination of this anticipated joy or freedom or being out and about in the summertime, God willing, here in San Francisco, I also am thinking about the trauma that those of us who have endured, all of us who've endured this, have trauma, whether we lost a loved one, whether we ourselves were sick, whether we worked, as I spoke to people who are frontline healthcare workers, and they certainly took a lot of trauma and had to deal with a lot of stuff. So the combination of the excitement for the freedom and the awareness that we're just not going to be able to go back to pretending that what has happened in the last 18 months hasn't gone down, and finding out a way to make people comfortable and to be re-enter into the space again is important. And finding a way to do that while both being excited about the freedom, but aware of, the impact that we've experienced and what that's had on us.
Thank you. That's a wise perspective on this newfound freedom, because I feel like it's a little bit of like why we put salt on our challah, right? It's just this reminder that even in the most joyous moments, that it's not all good for everybody, and that no doubt there's so much
You don't like
unknown.
salt on the challah, though? I mean, I like salt. I mean, you don't like salt on the challah? That livens it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
but what it represents, I'm saying, what it represents. But yeah, no, it's no doubt there's a great deal of unknown with the trauma that we all have experienced in various forms, and what that's gonna do for us.
And for you and for me, you've been doing a lot of work with families, and me as the rabbi here, we're definitely, we feel it. We feel it because we're with this whole community, and we feel what this community feels. So I'm really happy and proud of all the work that you've done now that you've almost been with us for 10, 11 months now. The way that you've really helped liven up our family offerings, our online offerings, and brought diverse viewpoints and perspectives into our children's programs, and found kids to find their own way into Judaism, and have led us all on this path over these past 11 months towards greater acceptance and awareness. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to have introduced you to your guest today. She's an inspiration to a lot of us. So I'm gonna leave and let you introduce her.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm blessed to be a part of the community, and I'm hoping, kind of with that frame of kind of this freedom and this trauma that we're going to be kind of side by side walking with moving forward. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, and I think that it will be uplifting to hear from her. So, it is my honor to welcome this month's guest, Rabbi Sandra Lawson. Rabbi Lawson works with senior staff, lay leaders, clergy, rabbinical students, and Reconstructionist communities to help Reconstructing Judaism realize its deeply held aspiration of becoming an anti-racist organization and movement. In her role, Rabbi Lawson is developing a series of anti-racist policies and trainings for the organization and its affiliate members. She also serves as a mentor to rabbinical students. Rabbi Lawson, you may open up your camera if you haven't yet. The 2018 Reconstructionist Rabbinical College graduate is one of the first African-American queer female rabbis. The thought leader has consciously sought to alter the perception of what a rabbi and the rabbinate looks like. Rabbi Lawson is known for tackling difficult questions surrounding Jews and race in podcasts, essays, media appearances, and speeches. A social media pioneer, Rabbi Lawson models what it means to teach Torah in digital spaces. She has built a following of more than 50,000 people on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. In 2020, the Forward named Lawson to its Forward 50, proclaiming her a quote-unquote truth teller. Prior to joining Reconstructing Judaism, Rabbi Lawson served as the Associate Chaplain for Jewish Life and the Senior Jewish Educator at Hillel at Elon University in North Carolina. She is also the founder of Kol HaPanim, All Faces, an inclusive Jewish community that is relevant, accessible, and rooted in tradition, where all are welcome and all who come are welcomed and diversity is embraced. Rabbi Lawson was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up in a military family. She graduated from Florida's St. Leo University, magna cum laude, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology. She also holds a Master of Arts degree in sociology from Clark Atlanta University. We're not done. Rabbi Lawson also served in the U.S. Army as a military police person with a specialty in military police investigations. She specialized in cases involving child abuse and domestic violence. Upon leaving the military, she started a personal training business and later worked as an adjunct instructor of sociology at local community colleges. She has also served as the investigative researcher for the Anti-Defamation League's Southeast region, becoming the go-to person when law enforcement in the South needed information on hate groups. And lastly, Rabbi Lawson lives in North Carolina with her wife, Susan, and their 3 fur babies, Izzy, Bridget, and Simon. Rabbi Lawson, welcome to People on the Path. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. How are you doing? Oh, I can't hear you, Rabbi Lawson.
I was muted, sorry. Anyway, I'm doing pretty good. I was just saying that it's always interesting hearing my bio read out loud, and I stepped out during the intro to turn the air conditioning on because it's 80 degrees outside, and I've been
Wow.
inside all day, and I actually want to go outside.
So yes, well, I'm really glad that you're here.
Thank you.
I actually, it's amazing. I've heard about you from various people, and then when somebody heard that I was doing this program, they were like, you need to have this rabbi on. She's a vegan. She's a personal trainer. She plays guitar. She's a cook. I don't know. There's all these things that they were just saying about who you were, and then it turns out that Rabbi A knew you. So I was super excited, and I just grateful that you have taken the time to be with us today. And I'm just gonna say, according to your bio, you're not messing around. Like, just I'm just gonna put that. Like, where do we even start? I certainly want to hear about your present work today as the director of racial diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, People on the Path is an opportunity for us to learn about an individual's path and their journey. So let's start at the beginning for you. You were born in St. Louis, a
Yeah.
part of a military family. So, I also looked and noticed that you and I are nearly the same exact age. So, I know what it was like to be a Midwestern kid in the 70s. So tell me, what was your life like growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis. For some context, it was actually where I lived, the next block was Ferguson. And um, I'm just saying that so because Ferguson has a lot of meaning for people today, but years ago nobody would have known what that meant. And my dad was in the military, and it was before, like, my dad was a Vietnam War vet, and so when my dad came home from the war, there was no parades, there was no like, yay, there was none of that. And there was no like, thank you for your service while I was growing up. He just was the guy. He went to work in a uniform and came home and was dad, and didn't really spend a lot of time talking about it. And because he worked primarily in the civilian sector as a recruiter and career counselor for military people and ROCT instructor, I didn't spend a lot of time on military bases. I mean, I did before the age of 5, but after that, we lived in places where there were no military bases. So it was like, in my mind, my dad had this weird job that I had difficulty explaining.
And did you have siblings? Did you like what were you do what would what were you doing for fun as a kid in St. Louis?
Oh, like I don't have kids, but like my mom was like, go outside and play and don't come back. Make sure you come back before the street lights are on. And so, we had to, I have my sister-in-law and people I know that have kids. Like, kids have play dates and like scheduled appointments, and we made up games.
Yes.
And it was fun. Like, I remember, like, my friends Jill, my friend Stacy, who I'm still sort of in contact with. When we were preteens, we would go bike riding, and the intention was to get lost and then find our way back. There was no cell phones, and there was no video games, there was no nothing. It was just like you just had to make a lot of fun. And and I mean, I love technology, don't get me wrong, but I wonder sometimes if kids are missing out on that sort of creative play.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a rabbit hole we could go down, but we're gonna
Yeah.
put that in the parking lot over here for a minute. And so I want to ask, so all right, so you sound like you had a pretty what sounds like a very similar experience that I had growing up in the suburbs of Detroit. I also somehow could hear my mom yelling my name no matter where I was in the subdivision, because
Oh my God, yes.
dinner was coming. My hearing
Oh
is
my
not as
God,
good at this
yes.
point. But
Yeah, no, my mother did that, but I had a friend, Michael. They lived like a couple of blocks away, and we could always hear his mom, Michael.
yeah, I don't know how her voice
I don't.
carried that far. I mean, it would be blocks and blocks.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta go, everybody. Bye. Um, all right, so was your family religious at all? Would you feel like there was some spirituality that existed in your home as a kid?
No, I didn't even realize how lack of religion my parents we had until I started talking to people who actually did go to church. Um, my parents, as I learned later on, well, my dad anyway. My dad grew up in a small church in rural Arkansas, like whatever stereotypes you have in your mind about wooden structures and churches and fans, that's it. And I don't really, and my mother had some trauma, and so I don't know much about my mother's upbringing, and I don't know much about her religious life, but um, she made the decision, according to my dad, that we would not be raised religiously. But we moved around quite a bit, and neighbors often would invite us to church, and I think we would go because that was the polite thing to do,
Mm.
and we wouldn't, it wasn't a regular thing. There were some times where, like, my parents were having a difficult time in their marriage, and we went to this one church in Iowa, I think it was Iowa, regularly. And when I say regularly, probably for a few weeks, and then we just stopped going. I think when they got back together, my mother didn't find the need for that anymore. But I know I'm not even sure. Like, the Christianity was the default because that was all I knew. I didn't know anything about other religions, and nobody in my orbit was talking about other religions. Yeah, so, but I didn't. I mean, living in a Christian centric society, like, I understood enough about Christianity, like the Jesus birth narrative. That's pretty
Mm.
much all I knew. And I didn't know anything else. So yeah. And then when I left for college, I had no interest in any religion. And it wasn't even in my mind. Like, I tell people a lot, if you'd asked me when I was 20 years old if I'd be talking to you as a rabbi today, I would have thought something was seriously wrong with you. Because it's like there was no path that said rabbi in my world.
Yeah, that we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that
Mhm.
time really soon. But before we get to kind of that story of how Judaism came into your
Mhm.
life, I wanted to ask a little bit about your values as a child, and if for some of the guests, I asked kind of about what your Jewish values were as a child, but since you weren't raised as a Jew, how were values kind of represented in your home? And as your father is kind of a military person,
Mhm.
was he strict? Did he have kind of that persona that I some kind of like apply to a parent who would be in the military, of kind of keeping you in line, in order, and basically, so I'm asking, like, what kind of values existed in your home as a kid? How are you being kind of told to live your life?
Yeah, so my dad was not that stereotypical dad. He was not, I mean, he was so not that at all. And I think, my dad he had, some challenges, but he's a very gentle man. And I think for him, um, the military was work, and then he would come home, and that was dad. Like, and I do know, I have friends who had military parents and or fathers or whatever who were very strict, and that just was not my dad at all. Um, but no, like, I was raised by two black parents who were products of the 60s, and taught me very early on how the world works,
Mm.
which is a luxury. Black people don't have the luxury to shield their children from the racism in our society, because they'll experience it. I still remember, like, I don't know, I just realized there's another one. But when I was, I know we're getting off topic, but I remember when I was like 5, I went to see my grandfather, and some kid used the N-word in referring to me. But that is not even the most shocking thing, because when I was 4, a grown woman, who didn't want me playing with her daughter, pushed me down a hill, told me to leave her dog alone, and then as I went up a hill, pushed me, and then I went home, and I told my mom, crying, and my arm was all scabbed up or bloody. And my mom, still surprised that I remember this, because I remember asking her a decade or so ago, like, I said, "Mom, why did you get a knife to go talk to that lady?" And she said, because if a grown woman would push a 4-year-old child, I didn't know what she was going to try to do to a woman who was 6 months pregnant. Because my mother was like really pregnant with my brother. Um, and and that was on a military base. And my dad told me that he filed a complaint, and that family was told to leave. And I'm sure something happened that I'm not aware of. But like with that, my parents grew up in the segregated South, in different states, under Jim Crow, and they grew up in sharecropping families with very different experiences. And my dad grew up poor, but played with white kids, but they went to separate schools, and people sort of got along. Um, and he was really kind of smart, and sometimes I think wishes he didn't go to a segregated school, but he loved his he grew up in a big family and they were all really close. My mom, on the other hand, grew up in a different part where she didn't like white people. Like white people were horrible and mean, and um, my grandfather slept with a gun under his pillow. In fact, when I heard this story as a kid, I wanted to see if it was true when I would go visit my granddad, and sure enough, there was a gun under his pillow. And just very different experiences. And with that said, though, my parents both raised my brother and I to, like, I would say today, like, love your neighbors, you love yourself, and love everyone. The world is not kind, but you must be kind to people. Also, when I remember, this is funny. I was 6, I think, and this girl Tammy would get off the school bus and she'd beat me up. Like, I don't know why. I don't remember why. I mean, she would just beat me up, and I'd go home crying. Every day, beat me up. And I remember my parents in the basement. I don't think parents would do this today. My parents were trying to teach me how to fight. Like, my mom was like, "Okay, when she does this, what do you do?"
How did that work out? How did that work out?
Well, I remember, like, when I finally fought back, the fighting stopped. I think I got one good swing in, and then we were like best friends after. But I just thinking about that, because, like, do parents do that? Like, nobody called Tammy's mom that I know of. But my parents, like, are in the basement. Okay, when you need to learn how to take care of yourself.
It sounds like a sitcom from the 50s. That moment. I feel like I've seen that in many shows.
I'm gonna see my dad in a couple of weeks. I've forgotten about that. I'm gonna ask him.
That's
about that.
amazing. All right, so I'm just going to acknowledge that as much as I thought our lives were similar growing up, they weren't. I did not experience any of those things that you experienced. Definitely was unaware of my white privilege then, but realized that that's what I had. So thank you for sharing those details, and I appreciate that you took the high road. That that the idea of loving your neighbor as yourself is how you kind of left your home in St. Louis, and so when you left your home in St. Louis, you go to university, kind of, I'm assuming, pretty wide-eyed and uncertain about what's coming. You find yourself in Florida.
Yeah, Florida was a detour. Well, not a detour. It was I don't know what to call it, an additional turn. Initially I went to undergrad in Missouri, Northeast Missouri State. And it's now called Truman State University. And I was there for about 2.5 years, and I dropped out and I joined the military. And while I was in the military, I was at St. Leo College.
So that, I see. Oh, so you were simultaneously in the military and going to college in Florida, and that was when you not. Wait, I thought it said.
No, so like, yeah, so the military, so like I only had a semester or two to finish. No, semester, I think one or two semesters to finish. So the military, if you want to go to college while you're in the military, it's completely possible. And there are mechanisms in place for you to either go while you're in the military or to take a break. All depends on who you're working for and the whole system. And so the military has contracts. I don't know what happens today, but while I was in the military has contracts with different universities. So when I was stationed in Georgia, yeah, Georgia, um, the University of Maryland was on our military base. St. Leo was on our
Oh,
military
wow.
base, and there was another university, and you can different degree programs. And so I picked St. Leo because I wanted to finish my sociology. I had started sociology, and that's what I wanted to finish. And I think I preferred that program over the University of Maryland program.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Sorry for my
Yeah,
ignorance
I mean, it's why
about
would
how that
it?
all works. Again, I was trying to go off of the bio, but
Mhm,
this makes more sense because I want to take us to um, what I think is well, basically, in preparation for today, I watched a video of you speaking in March of 2020, and the video was titled "My Story of Becoming
mhm,
Jewish," and so I want to take us to that story that I believe did happen in Atlanta, and I just say it really moved me deeply to hear you speak about this.
mhm,
You said at the time that you were invited to go to Beit Haverim in Atlanta,
mhm, mhm,
um, and that your experience there allowed for you to be your whole self, and that upon completion of your conversion, you felt liberated.
mhm, mhm,
And I first just want to say amen to that. That we all deserve to feel
mhm,
liberated at our houses of worship. You spoke with great reverence about Rabbi Joshua Lesser, who
mhm,
was the person that invited you to Beit Haverim for the first time. And at that time, you were his personal trainer, which
mhm, mhm.
which I just want to like, on top of everything else that you were, you this was post military police. Now you were a personal trainer
Mhm.
living
Yes,
in Atlanta,
yes.
and
Yep.
you just coincidentally just met this rabbi. Did he reach out to you as like, I want you to be
Yeah.
my trainer, or how did
So
that happen?
yeah, so like I had so I was a personal trainer, and I did get a phone call from Joshua Lesser, or he came up to me at the gym and said, I want to talk to you about personal training. However that we're talking like over 20 years ago. However that conversation went. And so I was his personal trainer, and some of my clients became friends, and Josh became a friend. He's still a friend, a mentor, a brother from another mother. And I also, at the time, I was dating somebody who was Jewish. I had a lot of Jewish clients.
Hmm.
And I remember one of my clients who's a lawyer, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were training the new rabbi in town." And in my memory, I'm like, "Who are you talking about?" Or maybe I did know, but I didn't understand why it was a big deal. Like I just, and because to me, like he was just a client. But then, the more I got to know him, like I had my own biases of what clergy are. Because if you're a queer person, and Christian clergy, it was a time period Christian clergy weren't that nice to people. This was like before, police marching and gay pride, and before churches are all like affirming, it was way before that. And so this was like the first clergy person I had a relationship with. And so I
Hmm.
would ask him questions, like, what kind of clergy are you? And he's a person like this. And we had a lot of fun. And that turned into a friendship. And there was a time where I said, I don't want to train you anymore. Let's just work out together, because that's
Hmm.
what friends do. Um, and I think he, like how I tell it, I think it's like, when you become friends with someone, you invite them to your things, and um I think that's true, but I think also he sensed there was some curiosity, and the only way to explain it
Hmm.
was to invite me
Hmm.
to his synagogue. And yeah, I just, even though I didn't understand a word anybody was saying, I mean, there was, like, I think, there's a lot of synagogues you go to. There's a lot of Hebrew and hardly any English, and there's some where there's too much English. This I think was probably 70 to 80% Hebrew, and the rest was English. But like I remember, there's nothing worse than having a song stuck in your head and you don't know the language. Like I'm like I had to go back just to figure out what
What
this.
song was it? Do you remember?
Right, and I remember asking him like, "What did Lachado do?" He's like, "Oh, you like that?" I was like, "What is it?"
Okay, so you had, all right. So you're friends with this rabbi. He invites you. I think also in that video I watched, you were taking a humanities class on the 5 books of Moses
Oh,
because
yeah,
you
yeah.
needed to. You needed to
Mhm.
kind of check that humanities box off your list so you could graduate. But you went and you had no idea at that moment that Judaism was gonna change your path forever. Or did you have and so like did you feel like you needed to muster up courage to go that day? Were you like when as soon as he offered you to like invited you, you were like, yeah, I'm coming? Or like what was that moment before you walked in? Do you feel like you were looking for something at that moment?
Yeah, so no, I mean, so I had a girlfriend. See, it's interesting because I understand so much more about Jewish culture now, of course. But so I had a girlfriend who grew up really secular. But when she did go to services in Atlanta, she would go to Chabad. And so what I knew about Chabad at the time, I didn't really want to go. And I would ask her questions, religious things, and she just wouldn't answer them. And then I had this gay rabbi that I could talk to. And so I had always hoped that the girlfriend at the time we would go together, but she never wanted to go. So when that relationship ended, Josh was like, you can come anytime. And then in my memory, I think it was Hanukkah, and I think he said something like, this will be a really good service for you to check out because it's Hanukkah, and whatever he said about it. And I went, and I wasn't like, I was more, I think I was curious about Judaism because I had all these friends and clients, not necessarily for me. um and I liked my friend, so I wanted to see what he did. Like, I think when you're in a relationship with people, you want to share stuff. And um when I went, I think because I didn't understand anything, I hyper focused on my surroundings.
Hmm.
And that what that day is it's like implanted in my brain because I was like, I didn't understand the language and I was looking around. And I'm an introvert, and the person who invited me was kind of busy. So I had to like figure out what to do. The other cool thing is that there were several people there that I would see at activist things,
Hmm.
like different protests and marches, and didn't really know them very well. And so when I got to the synagogue, I was like, oh, like, there were several people there that I had already seen in the community. So it didn't feel like foreign to me. And everybody was super nice.
And you in that video I watched, you described that like the kids could just be kids, that
Oh, yeah.
there was even this dog running around eating the food off the ground.
Yes.
Um, and like and all those things, I felt like you were describing that like you're like, wow, this is a place that like I can be me. Um,
Hmm.
and then something really powerful happened at the end of the service,
Hmm.
which was what you called a prayer for the end of hiding. That is not a prayer that every congregation uses.
Right. Yeah. And I
And
was aware
so,
of that. It was like the only prayer that was in English too. It was like,
so what, like,
um,
what was said in that prayer, and like, and was that like, yeah, just like, what did that make you feel as a black queer woman? What did that make you feel like at that moment?
yeah. So like the service, um, the service is almost ending. I don't remember if it was before Kadisha Tome, before Mourner's Kaddish or not. But anyway, there was this, and I remember there was like, someone said a kavanah, about setting an intention around why we say this prayer, why it's important, and the history of the synagogue. The synagogue is a gay founded synagogue, but most of the members at this time were not gay. Um, and um, there was this card, and and then I looked around the room, and everyone was saying the prayer, even people that I knew were straight. And it's in the first person. We are, first person singular and plural. We as gay and lesbian Jews. That's and I think it's changed now to be more inclusive even. But we and gay and lesbian Jews, and basically wanting a world where people don't have to hide anymore. But here you have straight people saying this prayer and about being gay in the first person. And I had never been in any space except for I went to like an MCC church once, which is a gay church, I think. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But other than that, I had never been in a mainstream Christian Jewish religious institution that affirmed gay people. And I was just like, wow, very different world.
Yeah. So what happened next? I mean, so then, like, did you decide right then and there that you wanted to become a Jew, that you wanted to convert? What was the next few months, years? What happened next?
So, trying to remember when that was. I know it was probably 2001 or 2 or something like that. Because I didn't know it was gonna like change my entire life. And so, I liked it. And also like I wasn't a big partier. I did go to clubs, but not, not a lot. I mean, actually I went probably more than some and less than others. But to me, going to a synagogue on a Friday evening gave me something to do. And then I could still do something afterwards. But it was like, because otherwise I would just go home by myself. And I think sometimes the universe or divine intervention or whatever puts things in our path to like show us another way. And so I kind of liked it. And then I went, so it was like Hanukkah. And then I don't know if I went back right away, but there was a period of time where I started like Josh was leading, and then one day I said, I think I'm gonna come. And he's like, oh, I won't be there. And I was like, that's a thing? Like, you're not gonna be there, but this is still happening? And he's like, but you should go. Like, and I was just like, oh. And he's like, tell me how it is. And so that was the first time I experienced a lay leader leading any religious service. Like, that's a thing. And then I just kept going. And then I don't even know why. Like, I mean, I liked it obviously, but I got something from it. And then some of my non-Jewish friends just started thinking I was Jewish. Like I had a friend once who had introduced me to people were talking about religions or something. And she's like, oh yeah, she's Jewish. I'm like, I am not. Like, but I did, there was a, I think many synagogues today are way more inclusive than they were back in the day. Not all. And Beit Havarim definitely was more on the inclusive side, but I knew that I was not getting something, that in order for me to have full participation, for full membership, full access, that meant that I needed to convert. And there was no one, of course, saying you must convert, but I wanted to be a member of the team. I wanted to be part of this community. And I knew no one was saying like, we're excluding you. I just had, and maybe they were, I don't know, but I knew that like full membership, full access meant converting. And I remember in my conversation with Josh, I think one of the things he said is like, conversion is fine, but you're not converting to Beit Havarim, you're converting to this larger system. And I said, I know, I get that. And I was even concerned that working with my buddy on conversion would somehow possibly mess up our friendship. And I said to him, if that's an issue, he's like, no. And I realize now why, but and he also said, like I would be driving this. There was not going to be like, I knew that Jews didn't proselytize, but he's not going to like come after me if I don't do my homework.
Right. Yeah.
And also like, Josh and I, by then, he was the first person I saw in the morning. We would go to the gym really early, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I could tell him, we would talk about whatever questions I would have. Sometimes I would say like, okay, I need your rabbi hat on, not your buddy hat. Like, explain this to me. Um, and that's a level of access that I know most people don't have, but
Mhm.
I've been very fortunate and lucky that my rabbi is my best friend, and that I could see him whenever I wanted to. We'll see him every morning, while we were lifting heavy things and putting them down.
So how did all right, so a couple things. You said that you were an introvert. Okay. So how does okay, you can decide which question you want to answer first, because I'm gonna ask you two right now. One is okay, like how did you okay, so someone who's an introvert, when did you realize that you were actually a leader? Someone who has over 50,000 followers on social media. To me, that's not an introvert, but maybe social media kind of allows you to do things that maybe you wouldn't, not in front of behind a camera. But also, how did you become a rabbi? Like, when did that come into this? Like, was it?
Yeah.
Did you realize? Like you said, that you were at some protests. You saw some of
Mhm.
your kind of like these friends of yours who were then at Beit Chavirim, were at this. So you were like you were involved in that type of action in your life, but deciding to become a rabbi, deciding to like step into this leadership position. How did that happen? And yeah, tell us the story of how you became um, a rabbi. Like I want to
Yeah.
know, like, how did that go down? That wasn't in your bio.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, that's interesting because, I got a message today that I'm not sure how to respond to. I'm an accessible rabbi online, so people often reach out and ask me questions. And somebody wrote me this morning, or I read it this morning, saying they're interested in conversion and they know when they're after conversion they want to go to rabbinical school. So this person jumped straight to asking me questions about rabbinical school. And of course, I want to respond. I didn't respond back. I'm just like, can you just enjoy the journey of like
Mm, mm,
going
mm.
through the conversion process, being in a community, and then but no. So when I converted, the whole rabbi thing was on my radar. It showed up relatively soon, probably, but I was just Beit Haverim is an incredibly music oriented synagogue. In fact, I know I've been to many, 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 many synagogues since then. That if my entry point had been those synagogues, we wouldn't be having this conversation
Mm.
today. I'd probably be an academic, a PhD somewhere, teaching sociology at a university, because that's the path that I was on. Um, and so I remember like I was so happy. Um, after my conversion, and I was like, I did, like it was just this cool thing. And I remember like the service, the first service after my conversion, after the mikveh, Rabbi Josh was not there. And there was a layperson leading who knew, like I hadn't even, it wasn't even like an announcement. I didn't even say like, I'm converting today. Like, or there was no like bulletin, but she knew. And so her way of welcoming me, she called me up to I think open the ark or something like that. Like it was a Friday night. I think that was like that the synagogue that was honor reserved only for Jews. And so
Mhm.
when she did that, people were like, like and then like a week or so later we had this like big welcoming thing for people who like converted. um Sorry, I have dogs. I don't, could be the male person coming.
The fur babies, the fur babies.
Yes. And I was happy being a Jew in the pew. And then I discovered, like most people who are Jewish know, that once you join a synagogue, you're going to be asked to do things. And so I remember being asked to join the board as a representative at large. Well, before then I was asked to volunteer for things like the ONEG or whatever, which I was so happy to do. Um, but then there was like, we have an entry board position or board position called a representative at large or member at large. And I was like the board rep for a certain number of congregants. And so I would go to these board meetings. And then I found myself as the first vice president, which is like the executive vice president after a while. And so then I became like, I was the one signing checks and, making decisions. It was just kind of interesting. And I was happy with all of that. For me, though, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn as much as I could about my adopted tradition, and I love learning. I think one of the reasons I'm attracted as a researcher, but sociology was attractive to me because I love research, and I love studying, and I love learning. And I had taken or was trying to take as many adult education classes as I could, and I sort of adult edit out. Like I remember asking my friend Josh, I said, "Hey, there's this course taught at JCC. Should I take it?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Why?" He said, "Because you'll be bored. You already know more than he's like, "I used to teach that class, and you're already smarter. You already know enough." So then I created my own class. Like I created like um, an adult B'nai mitzvah program, and then which we did have one graduate, like, and I remember we brought a cantor in to teach like Torah trope, and then I worked with my friend Charlie to try to, because I didn't understand the Siddur. I wanted to learn like why we pray the way we do. So he helped me craft this like class to understand the Siddur. We worked on the outline and stuff, but we never like got the class like done. But I learned so much in that process. And the other thing is that I started doing a lot of interfaith work. I found myself invited to interfaith clergy conversations. And I think because the clergy in Atlanta, progressive clergy in Atlanta, we're always sort of like battling the evangelicals, and which is still happening today. But this was a time where states were trying to pass these constitutional amendments so that gay people couldn't get married, which is so funny considering where we are today. And so like some gay clergy that I knew were like, we're starting this organization, we're having these conversations, and we really wanted to be interfaith, which meant at the time Jews and Christians. Sadly, no one was thinking about other groups. But we wanted to be interfaith, and the truth be told, in my memory, the only Jew that would show up to these things was Josh. And I remember asking him, like, where are the other like synagogues that don't they care about poverty? Don't they care about gay people or whatever? And the truth is, I don't think they did, because they were in the suburbs, and our synagogue was in the city. And when you're in the city of Atlanta, or any city, it's harder to ignore, the poverty around you. Like, as a teacher of mine said, when the Reconstruction Rabbinical College was in downtown Philly, before it moved to the suburb, she's like, there's a big difference between having to step over a homeless person to go to class versus sitting in a mansion reading about them. So anyway, so I realized, so I liked doing interfaith work. I was also doing some political stuff in non-interfaith spaces, and I liked working with clergy better than I liked working with non-clergy. And I found that even the clergy who thought that I was going to hell because I was Jewish or because I'm gay or whatever, we were trying to find common ground, and the common ground was the state had no business in our bedrooms. And I was like, oh, I like this. Like, let's find the things that we can agree on and stop arguing about the stuff that we disagree on, so we can find a way to work together. So I learned a lot about coalition building, and I realized in my mind, if I really wanted to create the change that I wanted, and there was also a need to give more voices to Jews of color, that one of two things need to happen. I need to have the title rabbi in front of my name, or the title PhD behind my name. So I chose the rabbi in front.
All right. So speaking of rabbis, I know Rabbi Ain is like itchy. I have this like sense. I get this feeling every time I do one of these that I can feel him breathing, even though he's at his house virtually. And I'm gonna bring him in a second, but I want to take us to today. Okay. So here we are. It's June 2021. I'm just gonna say the wildest 15 months of my lifetime have just taken place. Pandemic, videos of police murdering people of
Mhm.
color, protests, marching, riots in our nation's capital, civil war in Israel, continued fighting and death in that region, which, dare I say, is based on racism.
Mhm.
And so you have this role now. You are director of racial diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, like, what do you do with all this? What do you like? What is your work today?
Yeah,
Um,
so when I took this role, I first of all I feel really lucky to be able to do this. The When I took this role, the first two things that I'm trying to accomplish within these first 2 years is um, two things. I want to move our congregations towards anti-racism. Um, Actually, it's three things. That and create policies to remove as much racial bias in the hiring process as possible. Because the Jews of color that are rabbis and Jews of color who are about to be rabbis face racism in the hiring process, whether we're talking about internships in rabbinical school or trying to get jobs in the real world. So, trying to create policies on helping congregations recognize when racial bias shows up. And these are congregations that don't even realize that racism is interfering, and maybe they do and they just don't care, but let's at least name this is racism, because if you don't name it, you can't see it and you are blind to it and you act like it doesn't exist. And the third thing is providing mentorship to our rabbinical students of color. So Reconstructing Judaism is the college and the congregational arm.
mhm.
And so I want to make sure that our rabbinical students of color are supported. And so I want to support them um, and be present. And then there's other things too to make sure that, you know, eventually we'll look at our overall hiring policy. But my mission is I want to make sure that um, rabbis coming up don't face the racism that I've experienced. I know I can't remove it all, but I want to like do my part in
Mm,
that.
mm. Beautiful. Thank you. Rabbi Ain, I know you are ready. Uh,
Hey.
I know
Hello.
I know
Yeah.
that you must have some juicy
Well,
questions for your friend. Uh,
well, it's good to see you. I
Mhm.
really love this conversation. I mean, so let me just start by saying thank you to Adam and thank you to you, Rabbi Lawson.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was a part of this group based out of Clog called Rabbis Without Borders, which the idea is, spreading Jewish wisdom to all comers. How do you get it out into the public? And Rabbi Lawson came in and joined us. I don't remember which year you joined our crew, and I avoiding you because I was embarrassed by the crush of attention that you elicited, and I wondered how you grappled with that. And I always just um like you always seem to handle yourself with real class. But yet
Oh.
I've always wondered, how do you handle, I guess, gawking or asking, stuff like that? And I guess so if you could share about that, such a characteristic I've admired. And then secondarily, I have a diverse group here, conversion students,
Mhm.
who, first of all, let's just talk about Rabbi Josh, who's got to be, I mean, the rabbi is a great rabbi by their students. So
Mhm.
obviously, we can really know how wonderful Rabbi Josh is. And as hard as it might be to believe, I've worked with a personal trainer before. Don't laugh.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you share everything with a personal trainer. I mean, you more than a therapist. Oh my God. I remember once I was going through really intense job search with the therapist, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I went for my workout, and I was just like, I can't lift anything. Like, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. 10.
Mhm.
I was like, I couldn't, just wasn't like feeling it. And then he's like, okay. So he took me out. We left. He took me to a pool hall. He got me a beer. It's like 10:30 in the morning, and we shot pool together. And that was like exactly what I needed at that
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
And it was just like he was rabbiing me
Yeah.
more than anything else. So I just love the story that you and Josh connected over personal training, because yeah, that's really where you can get a rabbi to be real,
Yeah.
unvarnished. Let me
Oh
tell you.
yeah, I heard all kinds of stories about, I didn't even know, like, he was
Congregants or whatever,
yeah,
sure.
and he was a new rabbi too at the
Oh
time.
my
Like he was
goodness.
like, and not getting a lot of love as being an openly gay rabbi and from other rabbis at the time.
Yeah. So that brings us back to my question, which is like, how do you handle, I guess, a lot of attention, being a spokesperson? I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to even be a spokesperson when you first walked into that space, but you had to be. It seemed like that, you had no other choice to me but to be a spokesperson. So I guess, how do you handle that? How do you handle the things that are negative that come your way? And how do you tell prospective Jews who might walk into the wrong synagogue, not walk into Beit Chaverim? How do you deal with that?
So I hope I get all this stuff. So one thing I want to say is that I remember, so Rebecca Serber used to be the executive director of
She
Klal, the rabbis
installed
of
me, by the
Pittsburgh.
way. She installed me.
Oh, that's
I
great.
love Rabbi Sirbu, and she has a long history at this synagogue, as a matter of fact.
Every job that I have had a discussion with Rabbi Rebecca Serbo before. She has a lot to do with why I'm in this role, because I was like, help me, she's just amazing. So I was in the rabbinical student cohort of Rabbis Without Borders, and there was some change where they had started to invite rabbinical students who'd gone through the program to the convention. And so Rabbi Sober reached out to me, and I was like, sure. So from my vantage point, I was just like a kid, like, oh my God, I'm with all these rabbis. I know their name. And like, I was just in awe of all of that. And I still remember talking to you. I was like, oh my God, like I need to learn. I need to listen. I need to listen. So I didn't experience the attention. I was just happy to be like a kid in this playground and like to
I
learn
was
with the
worried for you.
adults.
I guess I was just worried. I know how sometimes people can be.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's always something. So always somebody said something, um, and so the other thing too is even though Beit Haverim is not perfect, I don't want to lift it up as this like perfect institution, because during my time as a member there, I had people say racist things to me. I Every Jewish space I've been in, like physical space, not virtual space, but every physical space I've been in, someone will question my Jewish identity at some point. It just happens. Even when I worked on a college campus, like I just thought that was funny. Like one example, a parent brought her daughter to check out Hillel and met our assistant director, and she's like, is your rabbi around? She's like, oh yeah, I'll introduce you to our rabbi. And I come down the stairs, and she looks at me and she's like, are you ordained? Are you ordained? I said, yeah. And then she asked me like two or three other times the same question, but differently. And as if any major, any university would hire I don't even know what that looks like. How do you hire a non-ordained rabbi? Like, what does that look like? But I was more focused on her daughter, because that's who I'm trying to impress, not the parent. And so the daughter to me looked embarrassed, and she was still confused about my presence. So I just, hey, if you guys come to my office, I have this like business card. It says rabbi on it. If that helps. And then she like snapped out of it. And so I use I use it as an example, because here is another person introducing me to as the senior person, as the rabbi, and the person can't get past. Racism is just a very powerful tool. People can't get past color sometimes. Like how are you rabbi? Like I don't understand.
So how do
You
you
know.
teach? So I love your
Mhm,
vision, and it's a vision we share at
mhm.
Beth Shalom, which is a place where people walk in whatever color, identity, background they have, that they don't get spoken to in that way, and
That's great.
it
Mhm,
feels, and so what? But we have work. We're
mhm,
honest about the work that we need to do. And I have conversion students who,
mhm,
I want to come in. I tell them, you can't be Jewish unless you join. You can't be Jewish on the sidelines,
mhm, mhm.
and you're going to have to hear stuff that you might not like. And that's just a part of being in a real community.
Mhm.
So what can we do? I mean, tell us about the work that you've done, and maybe you can give us one bit of counsel advice here, and then I'll drop off.
It's a big question, I think, and we're all on a journey. I mean, we live in a system that has been this designed from day one, from the beginning of the founding of this country, to privilege one group of people over another group of people. And however old this country is, because my math is bad, you can't fix all that stuff in a day, a year. You just can't. Um, as long as people want to hold on to power, and that's very powerful. Um, One of the things that I tell communities is that are really invested in trying this, and we're all in different places. That's the thing. Like communities are in different places. Be proud of what, not you, but I tell people, be proud of where you are. Don't try to be somewhere you're not. But if you want to get over here, then do the work. But one of the things I often tell communities is look at your community through the lens. Look at every ounce of your community through the lens of a person of color, or look at through the lens of a queer person, whatever the things you're trying to work on, to and then make those changes as you go, because you really don't know what it's like for a person of color if you don't try to see things through their eyes. And the other thing is that if for synagogues to be really racially equitable, they need to be in conversation with people of color. Whether or not they're Jews of color is irrelevant. They need to be in conversation, need to be in relationship with people of color. I'll tell you a story. So I love Rabbi Susan Talvi, and she's a rabbi in St. Louis. And I was on a call with her about a few months in February. And she said, which I'm telling synagogues to do this, like she said when she saw the kids of there started to be more kids of color in her school, but there were no adults of color. And she looked around and she's like, I need to do something. And so when you're talking about being, rabbis without borders or thinking outside the box, she said, I brought in ringers. She called her friends and said, like, I got these kids and I want them to see black and brown adults. Will you come to my synagogue, please? And so her kids were starting to grow up with black and brown people in the synagogue. Nobody cared they weren't Jewish, but they could see black and brown people in the community. And I remember a really good friend of mine, her son now was, 20 something years old, but I remember like the first time he saw me, he just kept staring at me like you go here? Like, and he's a biracial child. And I think that's just so important for kids to feel like they belong. And that one of the best ways for children to feel like they belong is to see people that look like them.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for coming to this space, for participating in this conversation. Thank you for the journey that you are on, and the credit that you are to your teacher, Rabbi Josh, who I just
spent the
that.
weekend with him.
I just adore that. I just adore that. You just think there could be somebody, there could be a personal trainer who just got out of the military, and you walk in his shul, and that person could be that person could be the next rabbi leader of the next generation if you're just a human being, a real person. And that's just a beautiful story about a rabbi and a connection. And thank you for sharing it, and thank you for participating.
Yeah. I just saw him. We just came from the mountains. We were in the mountains of Georgia this weekend, so that was really nice.
All right, I'm leaving. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi Ain. So Rabbi Lawson, we are nearing an hour here. This could go on for a long time because it's incredibly fascinating, and I just find you extremely comfortable to chat with about all kinds of things. So, but I know that we are all busy. That it is actually nearing Shabbat for you. I guess it's a little late. It's summer, so it's still coming. Yeah. But I just wanted to mention that we're recording this. It's June 4th. This won't come out until the end of June because we release these the last Wednesday of every month. And so I want to ask you a question. As Rabbi Ain had told you before we started recording, that we received a grant from the Federation here in the Bay Area. to do work around racial diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're working with B'chol Lashon, that I know is an organization you know well. And I wanted to ask you about the Juneteenth Kabbalat Shabbat event
Mhm.
that you are the face of. When they're advertising this event, there you are. And can you tell us about what is the Juneteenth Kabbalat Shabbat with B'chol Lashon? How does that what happens at that event, and what is your part in it?
So I
And
so
why do you think like why is it so critical that it's happening in the Jewish sphere?
So I want to just backtrack a minute. One, I just had a conversation with Rabbi Ruth Abish Magder earlier today about that. So one of the things, when COVID hit and everything shut down, um, people were trying to figure out what to do. And I remember I got this call last year from Rabbi Ruth, um, and she's like, I have this idea for Juneteenth Kabbalah Shabbat, and I think that last year was on a Friday. And she's like, I'm thinking you and Rabbi Izama could lead services, and it'll be live stream. I said, sure, I'm in. And she's like, okay, I'll call Izama. And it was just this thing, like it was like this organic thing that happened with three friends. There's not a lot of people who can call me up and just say like, hey, I have this idea and I'll do it. Like Ruth is one of them. And I didn't really think anybody would show up. Like I thought like people would watch. But
You
it
said that you
turned
have
out
50,000 followers on social media.
but it turned out to be this like thousands of people watched, and there was tech problems, but people stayed to watch the whole thing. And so it's been a year now and people know how to do this stuff better. And so she reached out. And so we're in the process of planning that, but it's going to be different. I will be the I don't know what else to call it, like sort of like master of ceremonies, but I'll be like the rabbi. But there'll be other people also doing things, but I'm the one that's sort of drafting the outline and stuff like that. So it'll be really, really good, and it'll be fun. I hope it'll be fun. I want it to be fun. And all led by black and brown Jews. I'm pretty sure everyone, yeah, black Jews or biracial Jews, to celebrate Juneteenth. And for those who don't know, Juneteenth commemorates when the last slaves realized that they were free.
Hmm. Exciting. I hope to participate in it. Um, we could go on. We could go on. I could ask you lots more questions, but respectful of your time, I would love to jump into the people on the path speed round of questions. Um, and I think we are loose and ready for this. So
Okay.
I ask each guest these same questions. Try not to spend too much time thinking about your answer.
Okay.
But here we go. Um, what are 5 necessities that you must have with you on the path?
For me, my wife, like my wife has been central to me, keeps me grounded, helps me not to take things so seriously. Um, I think that I think enjoying life and enjoying the journey of the path is crucial. And self-care,
You
taking
still have
care of
3
yourself.
more if you have 2 more if you want.
Oh, there's two
That,
more.
that, that was 3. Life, joy, and self-care. Any
Okay.
more? We can leave them for
Laughter.
the next guest. They could have 7 the next
Yeah.
one.
I
Uh,
think, also finding things that bring you joy, but I think that sort of ties into what I said earlier. So I'll stop there.
um, what's your favorite Jewish holiday?
So it's a toss up between Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah. Like Shabbat is this awesome thing that we're gifted every week. And then there's just something about Rosh Hashanah, like the all the themes related to it, the liturgy, um, the chance to start over, a little leading up to it, the Heshbon and Nefesh, like all that stuff. But like, yeah, I look forward to uh, like yeah, Rosh Hashanah and Shabbat. I know for a lot of people, Passover is a fun holiday, and it is, but like for the last 2 years, Passover has, for me personally, hasn't been all that exciting because it's been virtual. So I can't wait to have people over for our Seder in our new house. Like we've had this house for 2 years and we've never been able to have people over here for a Seder.
Who would you like to walk the path with? If this person can be living, they can be past, it can be a person in their future. If you could pick any person to kind of walk the path with, who would it be?
So the other day I had a conversation with Jerron Paxton, who is this amazing Jewish blues artist, and he's also Black. And in that conversation, we both agreed that Harriet Tubman is like the definition of a badass woman. And she was also, called Moses. So if I could just, I've always thought the world of Harriet Tubman. And yeah, if I could like, connect with her, um, and learn from her, and then, um, and also like, Frederick Douglass, and like I've always wanted to learn more about Paul Robeson,
Mm,
um, and to learn more about Heschel and King's personal relationship, and their friendship, because I think that often gets lost in the story, that they
mm,
were actual
mm,
friends, kind of,
mm,
and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Beautiful answer. I would love to spend time with all of those people too. My last question. What do you see ahead of you on the path?
A lot of work. Um, we are, we are, when COVID started, a lot of people talked a lot about, I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to get back to whatever. And then I sort of believed, as things started to show themselves, that we were never going back. Something's going to emerge. We're going to
Mm,
emerge into something, because even though this past year has sucked in many ways, there's been a lot of beautiful things that have happened. More people have access now to services. We found more creative ways to connect with people. And then, like, um, 2 Shabbats ago, I came out of Shabbat and there was 4 mass shootings. And I don't even know how that happens in 25 hours. Like how do we have 4 mass shootings? And I think many people we're going to have to really do some internal accounting of our society, and try to figure out like how do we want to live as a society? I don't have those answers, but I'm willing to like help to figure that out or help to process that, because something is really wrong. Um, and, I've also seen stories of people just picking fights with people. I'm sure, I'm not a psychologist. I'm sure there's some answer related to being cooped up for so long.
mm,
And I'm also really concerned about the push in our um, political sphere of people trying to hold on to power by suppressing people's votes, you know, um, and and really, trying to make it harder for people to vote. I don't care what political party you're in. I think all people should have access to voting, and voting should be fair. I don't understand why that's a political issue. Like,
yeah,
it
yeah,
should be easy and fair, but
yeah,
there's all these people wanting to make it harder for different groups, Black and brown people, college students. Like, there's all these laws that are being passed to make it harder for people to vote.
yeah. Well, we are blessed to have you doing the work that you're doing. I'm so grateful that you allowed us to walk on your path with you today. It is always a beautiful way for me to welcome Shabbat, is to have these types of conversations, to meet somebody like you,
Thank you.
and to, like I talk to somebody like you, and I just believe there's hope.
Thank you.
There really is hope, and we need a lot of hope right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
So I wish you a great Shabbos.
Mhm.
Remember, everybody who's listening, this is not coming out for a while, and it won't be on a Friday. But I hope that this conversation can stay with you until the Shabbos that will arrive a couple days after you view this video. Um, and yeah, I just want to remind everyone, People on the Path is shared on the last Wednesday of each month. Please keep your eyes and ears open for the next edition, which will be available on Wednesday, July 28th. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope this
Thank
conversation has
you.
been valuable and will support your efforts to find your footing and balance as you continue to navigate and blaze your path, one step at a time. I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, and an open mind and body and spirit, just like Rabbi Lawson has on her path. Um, I wish you Shabbat Shalom, Shalom in general, and Anisia Tova, safe travels. And I'll see you the next time. And Rabbi Lawson, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I hope we can continue to connect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.